Welcome back to the second part of the swivel bucket conversion video. Recap of yesterday, we got the seat belt or the seat mounting brackets welded in, 3 per side. I didn't end up coating the passenger side, ran out of time, was getting tired and late. I did set the seats in, made sure that they're in their far back position. Just grabbed the seat belts, threw them in there, and one of the things that I noticed yesterday while I was sitting in there was the seat belt actually was pointing to the back of the car. As I'm sitting inside the seat, I was thinking to myself, well, this doesn't seem correct, but I wasn't planning on putting the seat belts in. I just kind of grabbed what I threw in the back and started throwing it together just to kind of give you an idea of what was going on. Some of you caught on to that, and one of the things while I was editing that video was the mounting location. It's never in the front of the belt, it's always in the back. So I just grabbed the passenger side by accident. So, not to worry, I wasn't putting the seat belts in yesterday. So, got that corrected, switched them around today, and basically once that seat was in, I made sure that the little plastic cover along the top of the seat, which sits out a little further than the mounting location, especially when the seat's in its far back position, made sure that that's not rubbing or doing anything bad on the plastics of the retractor that goes to the floor. And then mark your location, center of the hole for the mounting point. That's pretty much where it's going to be. From the center of the original bench seat belt mounting hole to the center of that bracket right there is 6.5 inches. Same on both sides. So that's what we're going to do today. And we're going to go ahead and put in the console mounts as well. I'm not worried about it. Heck, I have a transmission tunnel for a console sitting right here. So I've got the boot, everything that I need for the cable. My guess is it's probably going to go kind of right where those 3 little divots are, somewhere in there. There's going to be a little bit of room and some play with that. But with your kit, you're going to get measurements here showing you exactly where everything needs to be. It's going to be pretty simple. And I got the console all broke down so I can set that inside there too, make sure that everything's good. Now, with your bench seat has a seat belt retractor right here for your lap belt, and then this is your bolt hole that holds that seat belt down. Now, your stud is actually sitting on top of that. It's a riser for the entire seat. Your bench seat, when you pull it out, you'll notice that the inside tracks that mount right here are actually shorter in the back than they are according to your swivel buckets. Your swivel buckets just set nice and flat and everything. So that riser is also your seat belt retractor for your lap belt. So one of those things that you'll not need anymore. So all we're going to do with this hole is I got a grade 5 bolt. I'm going to stick it in there. I'm going to cut the top off of it so it's nice and flush, weld it, seam seal it, we're done. We don't need that. So we're going to drill a hole right through here. This is the floor. The floor comes up to the seam, and then there's a brace about this wide that comes across the bottom of the floor. We'll see if I can get this to show it to you. So there's your seat belt mounting point for your bench. We're going to move that down through this brace 6.5 inches, and we're going to weld a nut right on to the bottom of this brace. And that brace is pretty thick. If you do your rear floor pans, you're going to notice that that piece sticks out a little bit. So I'm just going to drill a little bit larger of a hole so I have plenty of room for the nut. Drop the bolt down in the hole, run the nut up to the reinforcement, weld the nut to the reinforcement, and that's going to be a pretty solid seatbelt mounting location. Initially I was going to cut all this out and move it back, but now you've got more cuts, more welds, more potential places for things to break. So welding the nut on, as long as we've got good penetration, we should be completely fine. When you pull those bolts out, they're going to be nasty, like this one. This one I actually had to cut the head, so you're going to want to take tap and die, run them through there, clean them up, get everything good. This is actually the bolts that came out of the bench seat. They're a little longer, but they'll be fine. They'll just be a little bit more of a bolt sticking through. So here's my grade A nuts. We'll weld those onto the back side of that reinforcement. One of the things that I'll chat with you here about quick, seat belts. Not saying you can't use any aftermarket seat belts you want. It's your car, you do what you want. Some people put 5-point harnesses in. Generally, if you're going with the swivel buckets, you're going to put kind of a factory-ish looking set of belts in. These belts are super hard to find. On the newer models, the later generations, or the last few that they made, they have a retractor that bolts up here into the roof for your over-the-shoulder belt, and it connects down to your retractor, which goes on the floor and contains your lap belt. So that'll come down, go to the bottom. On this, it's 73 model, so your over-the-shoulder belt is actually going to be right here, mounted in, and then it'll have a little pocket here in the trim that you can stick them inside here. Now, on the other ones with the one piece, usually I always find them, they cut the belt over the shoulder because these little clips and stuff break, and this one you can see it's even broke. But then it cuts into your neck as you're driving, so people got sick of them, they cut them, and they just got by with just your lap belts. Back in the day, it didn't really matter. Not that I get pulled over a lot in my Monte, knock on metal, but you could get by with just the lap belts in older pre-73. So these are hard to find. I do have one set that's black. I need to do exactly what I was telling you, cut that stud so I can get the one out. Now there's a good 12 to 24 inches of snow around it, so I'm not even worried about them, but it is a complete set. So that'll be popping up here probably in the spring. So I'm going to get to work on this, and we'll check back in here in a little bit and try to finish this video up and show you what all's been done. All right. Well, after a little bit of work, a couple hours, it wasn't too bad. After I got all the hardware and stuff that we needed, I got everything mounted in. You're going to end up test fitting the console a few times. I ended up going off the measurements that came with the kit, and they were off just a smidge, but we're talking like an inch or less, so not the end of the world where this front bracket went. I actually welded that front bracket in according to where my old tunnel was here, that came off of a swivel bucket car. So it wasn't that bad, and if you think about it, you can move this thing forward or back as much as you want. It's a matter of where you drill the hole for your linkage to come through the floor, and how far back you want that console lid to be. So if you want your arm sitting on there and your elbow resting on that console lid, you can go farther forward or you can come farther back. It's up to you. You can't go too far forward because there is some ductwork and stuff that sits up there, but that console is very, very thin at the front of that, and it's basically just a little pocket where stuff sits down in there. I throw my cell phone in there and charge it when I'm driving in my car. So it could go forward, it could go back, you could do whatever you want in there, but it just depends on preference as to where you want it. The only thing that I would have done differently with this particular one is you see these 4 holes that are in this reinforcement here. This thing is actually hollow, and it's bare metal underneath because they didn't do any coatings at the factory back in the day like they do now. So the only thing I would have done differently is when I had this all set up and set in here, I had my shifter linkage set in here, and you'll have 2 holes down there at the bottom, if it'll focus. There we go. You'll have 2 holes down there where it bolts in to the floor, and then you'll have your shifter linkage going through there, of course. The only thing I would have done differently is these 2 holes that are in here, I would have moved this console forward just a little bit, and I'm talking just hairs here, to make these things line up with them. But because these are offset and they're drilled kind of that way, I figured it's best that I just drill new holes. It's not the end of the world. My new holes will end up being right in front of these, just a little bit better centered than that. So you've got your 2 mounts there and your 2 mounts there. The 2 mounts in the front will mount up here, and the 2 mounts in the back will mount back down here. So aside from that, everything else lined up pretty good. The seat belts fit in there good. The seats fit in good. Console fits good. This is a little high in the aspect of height-wise. When I put the console in, the console wants to kind of teeter on this. So when I do tighten this down front and back, the console actually flexes a little bit in the middle. So I'm going to see about potentially grinding down that top spot when I go to test fit everything. But really, I need to get everything laid in here and carpet and stuff and see, you know, how much is it going to really make a difference. It might just be fine. I don't want pressure on that thing in case somebody bumps it when it's cold and cracks the plastic. That'd be the worst case scenario, but one of those things. So On this thing, we ended up putting, this is your original hole for your bench seat belt. I put seam sealer over that so it won't leak again, and then I went ahead and drilled out your rear hole, and we welded on the nut on the back side here, and then I went ahead and put seam sealer on that as well. So there's your original nut hole for the bench seat. I just welded the bolt right in there, ground it flat, put seam sealer over it so it doesn't have any leaks, and then we seam sealed around all the welds on this top side here too. So that way you don't have any leaks, everything's going to be sealed up, and you should be good. So aside from that, when I had the console sitting in there, I did run a grease pen through and mark the spot where the cable needs to come through. It's right in the middle of those holes, just like I thought it was going to be. So right now I just need to put everything back in. That seam sealer takes 30 minutes to dry. It's a direct to metal seam sealer, so before I top coat anything, that needs to dry for another 15 minutes roughly, and then I'll come back out after I eat some food, put some POR, chassis saver down on the bare metal here, and this will be ready to roll. We can start test fitting the interior and go ahead and get the dyno mat laid down on the floor. I do need to wipe all the dirt and dust and stuff out of the floor again so it's nice and clean, and I need to find that last female retractor that's somewhere in that pile of parts that came out of this car. So need to find that yet, and yeah, we should be good. So hopefully this helped you guys to understand kind of what goes into this. All in all, with the work that was put into it, you're looking at about 6 to 8 hours. I think I did it right about 6.5 roughly. I'd have to look back at yesterday what I put into it, but with making the video and stuff, this takes me a lot longer. I probably got 10 hours into this. So anyway, this is where it's at. If you got any questions, let me know.